On today's Question of Faith, why is there a banjo in the studio? Hey everybody, this is Question of Faith. I am Mike Hayes. I am the Young Adult Ministry Director of the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian, the Vicar for Evangelization.
And I'm Danny O'Brien. I'm the Music Director at St Merici Parish in Fairview Park.
And there's a banjo in the studio? Ooh, there you go. What's up with that?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good there.
I wrote you a song. You want to hear?
Yeah, go ahead.
Father Damian wrote a book. It's a book by Father Damian. I've read the book. It's pretty good. So let's all buy the book. That's the first verse.
That's pretty good.
Second verse is the same.
Oh.
Father Damian, you wrote a book. The second book by Father Damian. I've read the book. It's really good. So let's all buy the book. Wordonfire.org.
Wow, pretty good. I didn't expect that. But we did bring you into the studio partially to talk about this book launch, which is more than a book launch. It's a big Catholic party that will be taking place at St Wendelin on Thursday, August 3rd from 7 to 10 p.m.
Right. So come on out. And, we had one of these about a year ago with the Hillbilly Thomist coming, so we're kind of keeping that same kind of little banjo-ish kind of music thing going on, right?
That's
a little bluegrassy.
So if you recall, maybe you were at the Hillbilly Thomist concert last year, maybe you weren't. There's a group of Dominicans who call themselves the Hillbilly Thomists. They're named after Flannery O'Connor, who early on in her writing career was accused of being a hillbilly nihilist by one of her reviewers. She did not take offense at all to the word hillbilly, but she did not like to be called a nihilist. And she said, no, I'm not a hillbilly nihilist. I'm a hillbilly Thomist. So there's a band called the Hillbilly Thomists, played bluegrass music. Last summer, they played St Wendelin parking lot on August 4th. It was the same day that Bishop Woost was ordained bishop. And that evening, there were over 600 people who came to St. Wendelin's to hear the band, to drink beer, to eat from food trucks, to pray candlelit night prayer. And Mike and I thought, well, this was a great event. We have to repeat it somehow. So, long story short, when I was in Rome, I wrote a dissertation on Flannery O'Connor and St. Thomas Aquinas, and Word on Fire is going to publish a revision of that dissertation as a book. And the release date is August 3rd. Why? Because Flannery O'Connor died on August 3rd, 1964. Why is Danny O'Brien here? Well, he's my friend, but he was my editor for the dissertation. And the dissertation was accepted without any corrections, and I was invited to publish the whole thing.
Well, there you go.
Although I didn't publish the whole thing. I only published a chapter, because you have to publish a chapter to get your diploma, because I knew I wanted to turn it into a book eventually. And so I did, and it's coming out on August 3rd, and we're going to have a book launch. Henninger's is going to be there selling the book at a discounted price. We're also going to be selling Flannery O'Connor books and other books too. Country Parlor Ice Cream we're going to have their ice cream there. It's going to be free. There'll be 2 food trucks. There'll be beer from, I think, Forest City Brewery, and there'll be a band there that Danny and Father Mark Riley have put together, along with Danny's dad, a fiddle player, and a drummer, and it's called, wait for this now, A Good Band is Hard to Find.
Boy, ain't that the truth.
Hey-o.
Instead of A Good Man is Hard to Find, which is O'Connor's most famous short story.
Correct. So, Danny, how do you get into playing in general? Like, how'd you get into putting this band together, and how'd you get into music?
How'd I get into music? I've played music all my life. I've always been into music. Started playing drums and keyboards at a very young age. Started to play the guitar, maybe just before high school. And I grew up at St. Wendelin Parish in North Olmsted, and I think I started playing in church when my youth minister, Francine Costantini, who of course is your colleague, she was my youth minister at the time, and she invited me to play at Mass. And I only knew 3 chords or 4 maybe, but that got me started.
Yeah, that's all it takes to start. And it is cool. I didn't know if you knew that until just now.
I did not know that.
Francine Costantini, who is our director of youth ministry in the Diocese of Cleveland, was Danny O'Brien's youth minister. And who did you meet in your youth group? Didn't you meet your wife?
My wife, yeah.
Isn't that pretty cool? So youth
It's
group
a small-
sweethearts.
yeah.
And then Danny eventually became youth minister at St. Clarence. And he had what I would call, in the most loving and charitable way, like the nerdiest, most musical youth group. So he was reading Dante with his kids in youth group. And we met at the fest when I was just starting Tolle Lege, and he recognized Tolle Lege. Oh, it's St. Augustine. What's this about? So he was always sending us kids to...
Nice.
It was funny. Yeah, our first meeting was because I saw the Tolle Lege banner on your booth at the fest. And prior to that, when we had the Inklings, which was the book club at St. Clarence, I used to sign off all my little emails and stuff to them. Tolle Lege, comma, Danny. That was like that was our thing. Pick it up and read it. And so that was like, I had to stop doing that after that, because then now it's the camp, But
That's all right. It was. I do think in many ways all these things line up and they come together because this is how God's providence works. I mean, even the fact that there's a peacock feather on the Tolle Lege logo. We'll be talking a little bit about peacocks later on this podcast. Quickly, I want to say this because I think this is an important part of it. When it comes to, and I am very excited that I wrote a book, and I hope people read it and all. But I don't want this ultimately to be about Father Damian's new book. I want it to be about evangelization. I want it to be about Jesus Christ. I think Flannery O'Connor was a very faithful disciple. Obviously, Thomas Aquinas was a wonderful saint. And I feel like over time, the Lord has called me to do this work. So when I was a senior at John Carroll University, which is our partner university with Borromeo Seminary,
Right.
I was in a poetry workshop class my last semester. And what happened in the workshop class, you'd write a poem. You'd write 2 poems a week. You'd hand them in. The professor, Dr. George Bogaire, would read them, and then he'd pick a poem to workshop. So he'd put it out there, and then you'd kind of feel like you're getting crushed, but you're really learning how to be a better writer.
Right. Yeah.
And one of my poems that he liked, he said, "Yeah, Damian's poem reminds me of Flannery O'Connor." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's cool." So I took up my pen and I wrote Flannery O'Connor. I'm like, I got to figure out who this guy is later on today. Little did I know, Flannery was a woman, but she was baptized Mary Flannery O'Connor. And when she went to grad school at the Iowa Writers Workshop, she decided, I'm going to drop the Mary because people wouldn't accept my work. They'd think I was an Irish washerwoman. So that was her way of outsmarting her audience, her potential audience. And Conan O'Brien actually wrote his senior thesis on her at Harvard and said, reading her work, you'd think she's some old, angry, drunk Irishman. But she's really not. She's a wonderful Catholic writer. So that was my senior year. I started reading her work. I knew that she was a big influence on Bruce Springsteen. Of course, I'm a huge Springsteen fan. Eventually, I wrote an article about her influence on Springsteen. And then when I was in theology seminary, when I was at St. Mary's, my mom got sick again with cancer. She had been sick 4 times, but this was the last time, and she had liver cancer, and she was dying. And it turns out that I was reading O'Connor's letters at this time. And I came in one day, and I talked to my mom's nurse nun, Sister Kevin, and I said, "Hey, I'm reading this author, and she keeps bringing up your order and Mother Evangelist." She goes, "Who are you reading, Flannery O'Connor?" She was from New York. I said, "Yeah, how did you know?" She goes, "I knew her." I'm like, "What?" She said, "When I was a novice or a young nun down in Atlanta, we had a cancer home, and O'Connor, there weren't many Catholics, so she came to meet with us, and they had a friendship. So did Sister Benedict, who was the other nun on that floor, and she was taking care of Mrs. Cordis. Mrs. Cordis, her son was my first pastor."
Oh, wow.
So all these stars started lining up. I wrote my my master's thesis at seminary on O'Connor and von Balthasar and Springsteen, in fact. And then O'Connor was chasing me throughout life, and I did independent studies when I was at the seminary with selected seminarians who I thought would enjoy this, went on many pilgrimages. And then when I was asked to go to Rome, I thought, the only thing I really know very, very well and would love to write on would be Flannery O'Connor, but how could I do this? And it turns out at the very same time that I landed in Rome, a priest by the name of Thomas Joseph White, a Dominican, started at the Angelicum. He's from Georgia, was a convert to the faith, was converted partly by reading O'Connor's work. And I asked, "Would you direct my dissertation?" He said, "How could I say no to this?" And he was one of the co-founders of the Hillbilly Thomists. So all these things lining up. And then So I let Word on Fire know I'm writing this thing. Bishop Barron has done pivotal players. O'Connor's one of his pivotal players. Aquinas is one of his pivotal players. So he wrote the intro. The book's coming out on August 3rd, and we're having a big party, and a good band is hard to find is playing. So in many ways, I feel like the Lord has called me to this through weird, strange things, and I'm simply responding to this and hopefully putting out a book that will help people dive deeper into the mysteries of the faith by reading it. So.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part of the book? I always like to ask an author that question. It's like asking a parent what his favorite kid is,
Yeah, I think it's so I have 3 major chapters on O'Connor's metaphysics, her epistemology, and then her ethics. And in the last section, I talk about the importance of friendship. Oh. So her friendship with God, friendship with the saints, particularly Our Lady, her friendships in general, and then how that plays out, that we all have a deep need for friendship with God and with each other. And I think I offer something pretty new there. And I think my most original contribution philosophically is when I analyzed Parker's Back, her short story about the guy with all the tattoos, and talk about absences and instead of presences. But I don't know. But Danny was my editor, so he read the thing. Yeah. Did you have a favorite part of the thing? And you're probably tired of reading it and looking at it too. But
well, now it's been a while since working on it. I mean, going through the whole process of, writing and revising, and then revising again as it moves towards being published. So I have to think back, of all the what was in there. I memorable to me is your analysis of the stories, kind of how you dig into the symbols that she uses, how she charges those images with meaning for the reader, and the mystery of that, digging into what does all this stuff mean, and can we even know what all of it means, or do we just have to kind of like dig in and live in it a little bit and kind of absorb? But your analysis of the stories is really great, and the discussion of art, of how seeing is important and how that matters to writing fiction, how she connected that with visual art. You talk about drawing and the arts, and she thought about writing and art, in those terms, and she drew those together in a really interesting way, and you discussed that.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't know about Flannery O'Connor, she was also a painter.
Right.
And she thought that was very important, and not many people have seen her paintings, but she painted because it helped her to see. And she thought the artist was the one who saw things clearly and saw reality clearly. So I think that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And so, Dan, does the band take on like a Flannery O'Connor theme in their music?
We're trying to be, kind of eclectic and fun. It is. We want to have a Flannery O'Connor vibe. So there's a little humor and a little bit of a twist to it that I think is appropriate for her, but it's a party and we're going to have fun. So it's a mix. So we're going to play some Bob Dylan, and we're going to play some Springsteen, but we're going to play some gospel, a little bluegrass, some rock. I mean, it's kind of all there, and we may even persuade Father Damian maybe to sing a song or two. We'll see if we can get you up there.
Exactly. So this will be August 3rd.
Yes.
Which is the day Flannery O'Connor died.
She died in 1964.
Her saint day, so to speak, right? And we're going to have music. We're going to have your book available for sale amongst other books that will be there.
Right. Henninger's will be there. Henninger's is a big religious goods store in the Diocese of Cleveland. They sell books, but they also restore churches, do renovations and all that. So people are familiar with them.
Yeah, all that stuff. And then Country Parlor ice cream's coming, so we'll have free ice cream there, right?
Yeah.
And then
so we're going to have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry.
Oh, very nice.
Basic summer flavors.
Very nice.
2 food trucks. I forget. Okay. I think it's Off the Griddle and Manna food truck.
I think that's correct. If I remember seeing this as we were talking about it, I remember seeing these emails going around. And then and it's going to be right in the parking lot at St Wendelin.
So we do have parking available for those who need handicap accessible parking. But most of you will have to park in the streets of the neighborhood, which happened last year. And sometimes people will say, oh, there's not enough parking, so I don't want to go. But if you're going to a ball game down at Progressive Field, or you're going to go see a football game or a concert, people are willing to walk for something that's good. I think this is a really good thing, and it's going to be a nice night. So yeah, come on out. You may have to walk a little bit, but it'll be worth your while. It's free music. The whole
it's a party.
Yeah,
and there's plenty of parking in that neighborhood. Come on.
Yeah, and I should say this too. My favorite part of the night last year was night prayer, because if you've not been in St Wendelin's Parish, it's beautiful. It's not Baroque. It's simple, but it also has some nice statuary and windows. But there's no pillars in there, so you feel really close to everyone. And we'll close with candle-lit night prayer. And if you've not prayed night prayer, it's really easy. It's basically one psalm. But I wanted to say something else about that, and now I'm not remembering what it was. Darn it.
I just remember at night prayer last year, Bishop Boost came in, and the candles were all lit, and he looked out into the congregation and went, "This is really cool."
Yeah. Yeah. And then we sang the Salve Regina at the end, which was very cool too. So, yeah, come on out for that, because it's something special. And even if you're not Catholic or haven't been to church in a while, or say, I don't know if I believe this stuff, you can still come to hear a band play. You can still drink beer if you're of age. You can still eat ice cream. And you can still come into the church and pray with us. And even if you don't want to, you can, just videotape it or something.
And sometimes it's just a good first step. If you've been away from the church for a while and you're like, well, I want to come back, but I don't really know, what I'm doing, or all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot for people to come back, right? And so now you have one, strength in numbers. There's going to be a bunch of people with you. No one's going to know it's your first time back.
Right.
Just join the crowd, follow along with what everybody else does.
Yeah, and it's an easy thing to follow. There's not a lot of there's standing and sitting once. I think.
Yes, it's 15 minutes, right? So you could start out small, work your way up as we go in. So just pray. That's what I tell people. Just pray.
I remembered what I wanted to say too.
Yeah,
it's my baptismal parish.
Oh, that's
so
right.
You can see the place I was baptized, and my dad too, and a lot of my family. So traditionally, St Wendelin is a Slovak parish, the way that St Patrick's in that neighborhood is a Irish parish, the way that St Emmerich's is a Hungarian parish. But nowadays, you still have the nationality tradition, but you're serving the populace of your neighborhoods too. Right. So if you live in that neighborhood and have never been to St Wendelin, come out. You meet Mike, you can meet me, you can meet Danny, you can meet a bunch of folks. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, and there are a lot of young people living in that area now too. So if you're a young person listening to this podcast and some of your friends live in that area, tell them to come on out.
Yeah,
party in the neighborhood.
And Mike can tell you that one of our strategies down here in terms of evangelization is we'll build on things that already exist. So for instance, the second ballpark mass, there was already a 50th anniversary of Fatima Center, so we said, let's build the ballpark mass on top of that. With this one, we're already having this book launch, Hillbilly Thomist, A Good Man is Hard to Find thing going on. So we're going to have the Tole Lege reunion that night too, and it starts a little earlier. So there'll be a synergy of people.
Yes, indeed it will be. And so I guess that St. Wendelin's could be our church search for today, since we've already talked about that.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah, we already did. So come to St. Wendelin, check it out. You'll enjoy it.
It's a great
Pray
church.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on Columbus. People drive by it all the time on their way to the flats and forget that it's there. Like, I've never been in that church, so stop in.
And then our readings for this coming Sunday is the Transfiguration. So I'll just read a little bit from Matthew's Gospel. Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, conversing with them. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud cast a shadow over them, and then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, when Mike handed me the readings earlier today before the recording, I thought, man, here's just another star colliding in this whole Flannery O'Connor business. And the reason I say that is because a few years ago, I went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and we went to Mount Tabor, where the Transfiguration took place. And the most prominent symbol up in that chapel is a peacock.
Oh.
And the peacock is a symbol for the transfiguration, because when a peacock's feathers are down, tail feathers, just looks like an ugly bird. But all of a sudden, when it throws its feathers out, it's the glory, like the glory of the risen Christ, which is pretty rad. So there's a tie-in. The other thing I wanted to say too, the Byzantine nuns told me this about a month ago. I didn't know this, and I don't know if it's scriptural, but they said it's in the tradition that the transfiguration actually happened at night.
Huh.
I didn't know that before.
I did not know that either.
So I'll have to do some more research. The Byzantine nuns usually tell the truth, though. So.
And for anyone who doesn't know, of course, Flannery O'Connor kept peacocks.
Yes.
And so we associate that with her. And she wrote a whole essay about when the peacock opens up its tail feathers and people's reaction to seeing that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's called The King of the Birds. And if you're wondering about that, if you buy the book, then you can read about it in there.
Huh. I have a T-shirt from the Hillbilly Thomist that has a peacock on it also.
Yeah.
So comes together.
She had over 40 peacocks on her farm.
40.
And what's great now, eventually I'd like to do this. This could be a young adult pilgrimage. I'd love to do a Flannery O'Connor pilgrimage. She was born in Savannah, Georgia. Mm-hmm. You can still visit her childhood home, which is now a museum. She was baptized at John the Baptist Cathedral next door. And then you drive into the heart of the state. Milledgeville is the pre-Civil War capital. And that's where she spent the last 14 years of her life, on a farm with her mother. And she went to Mass every morning, ate breakfast, and then she would write for 3 hours every morning from 9 to 12. So that was my schedule when I was writing my dissertation. I wrote for 3 hours every day. And if you really hyper-focus, you're tired at the end of that. But over time, in 17 months, I wrote a dissertation. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I should say this, too. The dissertation was 138,000 words. The book's 80,000. It's accessible. It's not written for specialists. It is, I mean, it's got footnotes and it's scholarly, but it's not dense. Academic jargon.
Yeah, it's not dense. Yeah, it's too dense maybe.
Yeah. but if you read my first book and you're like, oh, it's another one of Father Damian's stories. No, it's not that. It's a little different.
We've gone through this whole podcast, and I don't think we've ever said what the title of your book is.
Oh, the title of the book is Understanding the Hillbilly Thomist, subtitle, The Philosophical Foundations of Flannery O'Connor's Narrative Art. So she read a lot of philosophy. My book, my research is about showing that the philosophy that she read and also inherited simply by being a Catholic, preconciliar Catholic, informed her fiction, her narrative art. And the best way to understand her fiction is to understand those philosophical principles upon which her art stands.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, final week of the regular season, and let's start with that big game to determine the final seed in the playoffs. And the St. Vitus Lions grabbed that last spot by beating the Chosen Ones in a close one, 7-5. A big 6-run first inning capped by a leadoff double by Brett Yanisak, and also a 2-run single by Josh Stiller. That gave the Lions all they needed. The Chosen Ones chipped away, but it was not enough. A home run by Ben Pollock in the fourth, the big blow for them. So Young Vitus will take on Big League Chew on August 13th. They clinch the top seed with a convincing 24-9 win over the Southside Sabres. Cat Linville won the hitting title, going 3 for 3 with 4 RBIs. Paul Isobe with 3 hits and 3 RBIs, and Michelle Nin with 3 RBIs as well in this one. Southside ends their season in last place with Phil Wancata, 3 RBIs in this final game. That was enough to capture the league runs batted in title with 17. The Ite Project lost to Catching Flamingos 12-2, and these two teams will meet again in the playoffs on the 13th of August as they maintain the 2-3 seeds. Chris Troll, 4 hits for the Flamingos. Ashley Garvin with the lone RBI for Ite as their other runs scored on an error. And in the nightcap, Westside Whitecaps, they stay out of the cellar by knocking off the Lakesiders 23-9. Tom Bruno, 4 RBIs. Tyler Meter and Lakeside's Ed Winterberg each homered in this game. So they end up deadlocked for the regular season home run crown with 3 apiece. On the 13th of August, we'll have a Championship Sunday, and Veranova Health will be sponsoring that championship weekend, providing free hot dogs and LaCroix water for all who attend, so come on out. Games will start at 12:45 with the Big League Chew against St. Vitus, followed by the Ite Project and Catching Flamingos. And half an hour after that second game, we will play our final championship between the two winners. Next week, of course, a bye week for the Fest. So come on out to the Center for Pastoral Leadership for the Fest. We'll announce the All-Stars on next week's podcast. More about the All-Star game in September next week here in this spot. You're up to date. I'm Mike Hayes.
Danny was so kind to bring in his banjo, so maybe we could let him play at least one verse of a song.
Let him play us out. Yeah.
What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms.
And we'll have all that and more next time on Question of Faith.